And we're on! Tom, welcome to the Siobhan Lou Show. Are you excited?
Very excited. Yes, I've wanted you to do a podcast for years now, so it's good that you're doing one. I think it's going to be amazing.
Thank you. I know, you've been the one that's been encouraging me to do one for probably since we met, because you've got an awesome podcast and you kept encouraging me, but I've never wanted to do one. But I've been learning so much from podcasts recently, and Cacao kind of led me into doing one with these little messages, and you're my first guest.
I know, that's awesome. It's very humbling, Siobhan. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I think I've been on your show like a million times, so now it's time to switch the roles.
I know. Like I said to you before the show, I always love it when I'm on the other side of the podcast. It's just different. It's fun. So
I know. I'm going to ask you like all the shit that I feel that you should talk about that you don't talk about in podcasts. I'm like, why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about that? And you're like, and now I'm here to probe it and make it really uncomfortable. I'm joking.
Oh, yes. Well, we'll see, hey?
I know. So for people that don't know who you are and why I'm being so, just casual with you, do you want to tell them who you are and how we know each other?
Sure. Well, I am your boyfriend, number one.
Yeah.
So we've been dating now, I think, for 3.5 years, I think.
What do you mean you think? Like you should know this.
I should know this to the day.
It's 3.5. It'll be 3.5 years in November 20th.
Yes, exactly right. Yes. So it's just before 3.5, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, no, we've had an incredible journey, you and I. And I think we've learnt so much from each other. It's been some of the most challenging and most rewarding experiences of my life. And now I feel like we've got to a stage in our relationship where it seems to be just brilliant all the time, at least from my side of things.
No, I agree. We went through, and a lot of people say, oh, I'd love to have like a relationship like you and Tom. I'm like, yeah, you wouldn't have said that like 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
We went through shit to get here. And that's like all the kind of hard work. And for people that don't follow you, and they should, for people that don't follow you and don't know what you do you want to tell them actually what you have done, like what your journey's been, and then your newness?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose for my journey's always just been one of, so far, so I'm 27 now, and my journey's been very much just me trying to figure life out, I suppose. Ever since I can remember, I haven't really felt like any of it makes sense, and that uncertainty culminated in some, a period of time where I was really struggling with my mental health, and it led to a 180 of becoming, I suppose, a very small spokesperson for the power of talking to people and listening to yourself and integrating emotions and doing what you love. And I wrote my first book, and, writing has kind of been the one consistent modality throughout my life. I've been through all different sorts of phases, from magic tricks to training to football, but I've always been writing. And I used writing therapeutically, when I was struggling. And, I guess that's kind of led me to preparing for my 5th book now, which is all about drugs. So
we'll get into that.
Yes, exactly. But no, look, writing has, like I said, been the one consistent for me, and learning as well. So straight out of uni, went into podcasting with some friends, and that was incredible. Some of the guests we had on the show were absolutely amazing. And then I wanted to do my own show, which is a little bit more psychologically based, and that's over 100 episodes in now. So podcasting and writing have been the things for me. And you're doing podcasting now too. So it's going to be a house of podcasts.
I know. I'm interviewing like an expert podcaster. And just before I pressed record, I was like, is there anything I'm not allowed to do? Because obviously I swear and like talk about stuff that people don't want to necessarily like talk about or listen to. So yeah, we're going to get into that, because he was like, no, you're fine. It's your show. Do what you want. And the thing that, well, not annoys me, but the thing you don't talk about, which I really think you should, are your books. So can you tell people briefly what each book is about?
Yeah, sure.
And the title, so they can like look it up when the rest of them are released. But your first one's out, right?
Yeah, first one's out. Second edition is about to be finalised and published. So that book's called Yes, I'm Fine, Just Tired, which is it's just a personal story. You know, and I've got kind of 10 tools just that are kind of littered through the book. And I use my experiences as vessels to show people how I came to realizing that those tools are really powerful for people. So Yes, I'm Fine, Just Tired is my experiences around, you know, periods of anxiety and confusion and things. The next 3 books were actually one book that had to be split into 2 because it ended up being over 200,000 words, and the references was 30,000 words. So it was way too big, but it was a complete extrapolation of, you know, what identity is from different sorts of levels, from the evolutionary perspective to the neuropsychological to what the spiritual books were saying. And I divided that up into 3 because A, it was just logistically necessary, and B, because I think I could go into greater detail if I wasn't so general and I wanted to focus more specifically. So, you know, that became 2 books which actually at this stage are going to be called Yes, I'm Fine, Just Busy, and Yes, I'm Fine, Just Thinking. And then the 4th to come from that is actually called Echoes from the Past, which is all about trauma's deep-seated effects, but also, more importantly, the subjectivity behind trauma, because I think something that you and I are so interested in is this idea that pain and trauma and all these things by definition are subjective. So you can't necessarily compare a Vietnam veteran's experience with someone who was bullied in school, because for whatever reason, both experiences are relevant in that person's life. And I think that's so important to know, because in this day and age, people have a hard time saying that they've been traumatized, or at the very least saying that they've had stuff going on in their lives, because they compare themselves to people that have had quote unquote real issues, and that actually silences and dismisses their own experience, which doesn't lead to anything worthwhile for them. So I kind of wanted to write that book as a call out to people that perhaps feel like they're stuck, but also feel like they shouldn't be stuck, because, you know, there is no such thing as shouldn't, in my opinion. You know, it's just, that's how you feel. So you've got to deal with it. Yeah,
of course. So when will these books be available for people?
Yeah, well, if we can...
Pressure.
If we can wake up early enough and get the dogs walked every day, Bonnie, I think I want to get the audio done for all 4 of them, and the first one's done. So I'd like to say within about 4 months, I'd like to have all books up there available and ready to go. And then by that time, I'll be well and truly into the first draft of book 5. So yeah, it's really exciting. But I don't, you know, this is what you say to me all the time, is don't call it work, call it play. I've never seen writing and learning and reading as work. It's just fun, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what do you do for fun? As well as your writing?
Yeah. Well, I love to hang out with you. I love hanging out with you very, very much. It's very, very fun. I love training as well. We've got a little setup in the backyard here. So getting under the squat rack or getting on the bench, and then, God, Vonnie, what do we do for fun? We love hanging out with our dogs. You know, we love to, when this whole virus thing isn't around, we love to go for drives and listen to podcasts. But I think something that's been really fun for you and I lately has just been the business side of things. You know, I've loved watching your journey with breathwork and being astoundingly inspired by it, and the feedback that you get, you know, and the fact that I just can't possibly fathom how incredible your business is going to turn out to be. So I just love hanging around with you pretty much.
Thanks. That's very lovely of you to say. I know, and we're coming up to, I know you've been with us obviously through this journey with me since day one. And the reason I'm releasing this podcast is because breathwork is turning one. So technically, you've been doing breathwork for a year with me, and Cassidy's obviously facilitated us as well. So with this podcast being about breathwork, how has breathwork changed your life?
It's crazy. Like, we were watching a movie yesterday called The Freedom Riders.
Yes. Everyone should watch that. The Freedom Riders. People that are listening to this probably have done breathwork, so you'll get what Tom's about to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'd never been one to shove my emotions down or anything. I was growing up in a household where we were encouraged to speak from the heart, so to speak. But even still, we live in a society that just has a hard time with certain emotions. And I think that's starting to change. But, we're all very good at being happy and laughing, that don't seem to be an issue. But when it comes to disgust or sadness, even fear to a lesser extent, but sadness especially, like where we find it hard to cry in the same way that we find it very easy to laugh. But for me yesterday, I reckon I cried like 8 times in that fucking movie. It was unbelievable.
And you like turned away. You're like, I'm like, are you okay there?
Yeah, but then if I turned and faced you, I think the tears would have come just even more, because we were both tearing up. And if I looked at you, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't even talk anymore. But it was such a beautiful movie about, people. I mean, look, so applicable. People writing about their experiences and overcoming them.
Yes.
So
probably
very close to you and I.
Yeah. So breathwork, tell us.
Well, yeah, I think breathwork is like a natural psychedelic trip, and I think the best thing about breathwork is that it feels like you're in control, so you get to decide how deep you want to go, which I think is really important for people in the beginning. Yeah, because it's like an email inbox. If they haven't really gone back down and responded to those emails that are 10 years old,
that's me.
It can be a little bit confronting, because the other people might be quite angry that you haven't spoken to them. So in the same way, just starting to dip your toes into the waters of the unconscious can be enough for some people. And I think for me, that was certainly the case, because I'd been traumatized by psychedelics, which recently came full circle when I did mushrooms again. But that initial experience made me a little bit nervous to go into that experience. And I've done other things, of course. But breathwork was really nice. It's facilitating. So you feel safe, especially when you're doing it with people like yourself. And I don't think I'm biased. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I do also believe that to be true.
You always play devil's advocate with me. Exactly. Like if there's ever a decision, Tom will go like, well, let's just play the opposite. I'm like, yeah, cool, good one. So we know that you're not going to be biased about anything on this show.
Well, I try not to be, but sometimes I can't help it. But I think the best thing about breathwork is just this overarching feeling of compassion for yourself. The more you start
self-worth.
You take yourself out of the picture and you see what happened to you. And because you're giving it those experiences that were tough, you're giving it time and energy and the respect it deserves. So you no longer see them as, oh yeah, I was so dumb then, or I shouldn't have behaved like that. As it's this feeling of, well, I couldn't have done any better, and even if I could have done better, it's in the past now. And it's just a lovely, important therapy that I think people are really starting to warm up to, because we're craving connection, not only to yourself but to other people. So breathwork brings you back to yourself within a community of people that are there for you. So it's
have you had any like cool trips or cool experiences through breathwork? Like any cool stories you can share? I always love like pulling out the cool stories.
I think I can get lost in my head. That's probably why I like to write. I haven't had any, I don't think I've had any crazy experiences that were deeply profound, because I think a lot of that was coming through with my writing. But some of the stuff, like I can remember bawling my eyes out when you did a one-on-one with me. back when we were living in Bentley.
Yes,
and
that was right.
You can spend so much time with someone, but rarely do you actually see them. Or maybe that's just me because I'm fucking unconscious all the time. Rarely.
Was you?
Exactly. Rarely, are you given that time to really, oh, wow, there's another human being around me and I'm not distracted by all the things that are going on in my life. And I think after doing all that breathing and then being in meditation, and so much that was coming up for me was just, I'm so obsessed with our relationship. This is awesome, and then to open my eyes and have you just kneeling over me, making sure I was okay, was just probably what it all took to just start crying and going crazy and, being like, oh my God, thank you so much for choosing this guy, So that was one of them. I think another of them, just like important things that were coming up in my family, things like that. You put me on the spot, but I'm trying to think of a really important experience.
This is this is my goal, because you're so good at podcasting that I'm like, right, I'm going to nail this guy.
God.
I'm going to put him on the spot. Well, I remember some of them you've had like quite crazy visions, you've seen stuff. And you probably can't remember them, but I remember you saying, you've kind of seen them. But I think for men, it's always the emotional experience. Like, I think you were in a class when I had a guy who was like, I've not cried in 13 years. And he's like, it just burst me open, but in the best way possible. And if you don't want to come to breathwork and cry, then don't come. But, exactly. It really cracked him open. So I think for men, the emotion is always such a big thing for them. Whereas women tend to kind of be, deal with their emotions a little bit better. So I mean, I guess for them it is. But speaking of breath work, you kind of touched on it being a psychedelic, and you've done mushrooms, and we've kind of dabbled in some psychedelics as well. Do you want to talk about I know you talked heaps about your mushroom experience, but do you want to just say briefly about that first experience, and then we can dive into our experiences too?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I was introduced to mushrooms very young, maybe 15, I think, or 16, something like that. And I would do them every now and then at parties and things, but I wasn't aware of the importance of setting, and intention, I think, is really, really important. The first time it was just to have experiences and it was with a really close friend of mine. And it was an incredibly profound experience. But the main one I think that you're referring to is when I took way too much on Schoolies. I just wasn't prepared for it. It's not the mushrooms' fault. It was my fault. And the setting was off, and I had a pretty harrowing time. But, looking back on the writing that I did and meditating over it, and a lot of it came up, you asked me before about what some of my breathwork experiences were like. So many in the beginning, now that I'm thinking about it, were just related to overcoming that experience.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like they tie in together with the psychedelics.
Well, one experience actually that I can tell you about is there was an experience I had on Schoolies on the mushrooms where I fell down and saw my mum's stern face looking over me, and I was incarcerated in a jail cell. And that was really, really anxiety provoking. And then years later doing breath work, there was a vision that I had when I was doing breath work where I was in the same jail cell incarcerated, but the door was open and mum was actually staring down with me with a smile.
Wow.
So that was really interesting, because what it told me was that the only person, that actually was looking down on yourself badly was the person that I felt I needed to be at the time of Schoolies when I took those mushrooms. So it wasn't actually anything to do with mum, and it was just actually me coming back to loving myself,
Yeah, of course.
So that was really interesting. And then, you and I have always been interested in different states of consciousness, not from a recreational perspective, supposedly. I mean, that might come into it, but also just from like, what does it mean to be a human being? How can we, transcend shame and fear and, betrayal for you, fear for me? How can we be the best versions of ourselves and ultimately ultimately live in a world that is more inclusive and caring and compassionate. And part of that, a major part of that, perhaps all of it, is individual state of mind and contentedness. And recently you and I did a mushroom experience, and didn't exactly go to plan. I think it wasn't.
And not in a bad way.
No, not in a bad way.
It was not what we expected, or what I did.
Yeah, exactly. But I think one thing that we both got from it, was that time sped up like you wouldn't believe.
I know.
And
that was so fun.
That was really bizarre. But also too, how lovely it feels to be in the present.
Mm-hmm.
Because like obviously the reason why time sped up so much is because it pulls you into this place of, well, there is no such thing as time. It pulls you into that total state where you're out of your mind. And what a lovely realization for the both of us, that the faster time is, time flies when you're having fun, the more fun you're having. So that was an interesting experience for the both of us. But I suppose coming back to your original point is, what I love about breath work the most is that people can have these experiences without having to take anything. And it's totally safe. You're guided by someone, and, why shouldn't you do it?
Yeah, of course. And while we're on track with the psychedelics and we're talking about them, we've also, you wrote a blog about MDMA as well. And we've had quite a few experiences on MDMA and meditating with them. Do you want to share more about that blog?
Yeah. Well, that was an experience you and I did together.
Yeah.
That was in 2018, I think, in the beginning, just prior to Bali. And it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was for both of us,
Yeah.
And this is why we're very, I'm super passionate about breath work and plant medicine and psychedelics for therapy, because it's so profound. We've had the most amazing experiences, but we've done it in a way where, there's a setting, we're not kind of out partying, although we have used it for partying, but we've kind of, we've got the music, the vibe, a ritual, we kind of bless it in a way. And then we take it. So, this is not us advertising it, by the way, but we're really into it for therapy, so we did a session together. So do you want to kind of talk about your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It just feels like an incredible hug. And when we were meditating, I saw all these different parts of myself that I always felt I was somehow attached to, and in many ways that still is the case, but it was like I could see myself outside of the jar, see what was going on. And the young boy that was just scared all the time, going through puberty, didn't know what was happening to his body, scared about what would happen when he died, scared about talking to girls. Girls are very intimidating, Siobhan.
Yeah.
Scared about all these things, and just seeing him for who he was, which was just innocent and didn't know any better, and the ability to, and the whole time I'm feeling hugged, just feeling like the most incredible hug from someone like yourself, because your hugs are very nice, but just feeling that the whole time, whilst being able to go back into myself and see who I was. You come out of that and you think, oh my God, the reason why I have all these emotions stored up is just because I never went back and just forgave myself for being a human being, for being a kid, and an incredible warm experience. And it's so exciting that, places like perhaps in California, Johns Hopkins University are really starting to see these, because, if that I could get that kind of experience and you could have your experience for the things that have happened in our lives. And, we're already privileged to be interested in the mind. So we're already meditating. We're talking openly. We're writing. We're taking care of our health. you and I are CrossFit coaches. You know, we're already doing all these things, but for someone to be guided with a psychoactive like MDMA with assistance, who's not into any of this stuff, perhaps is just a car mechanic who enjoys beers on the weekend or something, to have that kind of experience is just going to shorten the therapeutic process by like perhaps even decades, you know. So it's not, you know, we talk about our own experiences, and yes, there are some legality issues with all this, you know, and, you know, your point is like, the reason why we're talking about it is because the effects that this could have on the world are, I can't think of anything more important than helping people with their own mental health, because then projections are far less dramatic. The ego is far less intense, and we can all start to hear each other and see each other, the truth of who we are, you know. I suppose this is kind of what we talk about a fair amount.
All the time. Like, we love it. And well, I always say that's the thing with breathwork. So I did that very first session. I was like, what the fuck? Why does no one know about this? Like, why does no one know that your breath can heal you? And then when I did that MDMA experience, I was like, why does no one know that this can burst your heart open? And, you know, you can, well, for me, it was a really intense experience, you know, from hearing words from like my grandma who's passed, and, you know, just feeling that hug, and it passed in like a second. Like, thank God we set an alarm, because, you know, people say you can go into such a deep meditation. So I like to share experiences that have completely changed my life, and MDMA therapy, if we want to call it that, was one thing that completely changed us both, you know. And we're just, it's so sad that we're just in a time that that's not available, but we're so passionate about trying to, you know, not advertise it, but share our experience, because it fucking changed our lives. That one session on, you know, that little therapy. And speaking about that and going, let's talk about your new job, which rolls straight into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, been interested in this kind of field for a long time. And, you know, now, I'm doing some work with a foundation up in Sydney, which is all about helping disadvantaged children, you know, with things called Street University, so the Ted Noss Foundation. And it's so exciting for me because I read the book that the CEO put out called Addicted, and just the correlations between trauma and addiction, and then also just kind of breaking down, you know, anything from stereotypes and generalizations about what we think about people who are addicted to what the word drug even means.
Yes.
You know, and no longer viewing drug as someone as a syringe, but perhaps something that anything, you know, any kind of substance that influences one's neurochemistry is potentially a drug if it's outside the body. You know, from coffee to porn to the syringe, you know, and everything in between. And I think these are conversations that need to happen, because, you know, so a lot of this work is around creating content for kids and for parents and for, you know, politicians and people that are leading, you know, decision making around potential drug reform, because we've been fighting this war on drugs for over 100 years, and its genesis is enveloped with racism. So it's already got this baggage that we should look into even more. But you know, we've been fighting this war on drugs for 100 years. It hasn't worked. It's cost us hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars globally. The only other question is like, well, okay, let's look at some other ideas here. One of the things is, why don't we listen to addicts, hear their stories?
100%.
You know, rather than just putting them all over there and saying they're all addicts, they'll always be addicts. The best thing to do is wipe them off the street. Why don't we just go, let's just firstly be a little bit open-minded and think, is there a reason why person A might be using heroin? And more often than not, 90% of cases, it's because of severe childhood trauma. In the 10% of cases that aren't related to trauma, it's because the way we live as society is so disconnected. So it's a social cause. The fact that we need something to remove ourselves from an unbearable state of consciousness. Like these have far-reaching effects that, you know, you and I, for personal reasons and professional reasons, are absolutely vested in. And so excited that this is kind of a job for me moving forward. So.
Yeah, how exciting. Yeah, and it's definitely something we're passionate about. I've spoken to people that have worked in prisons, and they just said, it's all just traumatized inner childs in like adult suits. It's like, I would love, if anyone knows how I can do it, I would love to get into prison and just do breathwork sessions. Like just, the addiction or whatever, I don't even think it's an addiction, but it all comes from this little piece of trauma that it's just spiraled and they're not sure what to do with it. And it actually takes us back to that movie, The Freedom Writers. Like, look at all of them. They started like writing and journaling, and then they had the connection of the class and the family, and then one person that believed in every single one of them, So it's like, how could we all just change the world just a little bit with understanding people, giving them a voice and letting them talk about their feelings and their issues, and connect. And obviously that's my mission with breathwork, is to bring all the little inner childs together so they can all talk and be seen, heard, supported. And that's really exciting that now you're a kind of voice for that too with your new work.
Yeah, well, and your point is so valid. What we do now because drug prohibition has obviously made it very difficult for people to alleviate their pain. And even in places like America, they have a terrible crisis with prescription medication. So things like OxyContin and what's the other one? Valium, all these sorts of things. But what happens over there is, as soon as a doctor believes that the person they're prescribing medication to is addicted to it, they cut the medication straight away, which means that what they were using it for can no longer be taken. So obviously they're addicted, so they need to get it in another way. Yeah. So they go to the black market and they start to rob, and that's when crime increases. Yeah. But you look at places like Switzerland, and Ruth Dreyfus, who was the president, I think I have that wrong, prime minister. We'll check this. We'll put it in the show. But she completely went bang and just legalized the whole area. And the place is just, it's so wonderful. I don't know the specific statistics, but like what they did with safe injecting rooms and giving people counseling, whilst they're healing their pain, just talk them through it. Eventually what happens is they use the drug less and less and less over time because they're working through the trauma, as opposed to just, that numbing themselves is important whilst they're working through it, so they can actually get to a place where they can work through it. It's just, these things take time to change, I suppose, but more and more and more we're now hearing about people's stories, and we're living in a interesting time, not got anything to do with the virus, but apart from that, I think it's exciting. So
yeah, well, with the virus, I feel like it's making people go inward, if anything, just a little bit more, and they can explore themselves more, which is always good for the world anyway. So I mean, talking about the virus and mental health, what sort of things do you do for your routine to kind of keep your mental health either like at bay, or I always say to people working with it, because you kind of train to work your body, so what do you do for your mind?
Well, I listen to you more.
Thanks.
I need to listen to you more. I think I can be my own worst enemy sometimes, but we have a lovely routine in the morning. You make your cacao, I make my coffee, and I'll read, and you'll do your scrolling, which I think is wonderful, by the way, because people always say, oh, you shouldn't scroll. It's like, we always say, well, who are you following? Yeah, no, I'm obsessed. I follow cool people. So you follow awesome people, and you're totally energized and creative after it, so we have that. And then we move into our meditation, which is, again, your idea. I feel like I'm always following behind Siobhan.
Well, we breath work first. We call it meditate, but we breath work.
Yeah, so we do some breath work first, and then we do a savasana, which is how would you describe that, Von? That's just relaxation, I suppose.
Yeah, so we do the 7 minutes of breath work, and then it's like a kind of 5-minute cool down integration, kind of bringing yourself, you're kind of just sitting in what the breath has given you or showing you, and it's allowing the energy to kind of settle as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so we do that. That takes about half an hour to 45 minutes, I think. Then we'll walk the dogs, so we're doing all the normal things, but having that sense of routine and structure creates a bit more certainty in an otherwise uncertain world. So we'll come home, we'll exercise, and then it's not till about 12 o'clock that we start to work. But I think if we, and I'm saying we because we both do the same thing, but your question was to me, and it's obviously the same. If you put yourself first, as the saying goes, fill your cup up, sort of thing. It just helps. It really, really, it's the best way to do it. I think you take care of yourself first, and then, and I don't know what this is going to be like when we have kids, if that's even possible. But doing that has really been really good for me. Anyway.
Yeah, and you're the type of person who never wants to, or you can't be bothered. No, but this is good because people will be listening, be like, I can't be fucked doing all of that. I don't want to spend like half an hour meditating. But when you do it, and when I get you to do it, you afterwards, like, how do you feel?
Yeah, I feel incredible. And I suppose, like, as soon as you dip into the meditation, the first thought always is, why don't I do this every day?
100%.
And we've been doing it every day recently.
Yeah.
So that thought's no longer as frequent. But yeah, it's so important. And one thing that I've found, especially, I mean, the irony behind not being able to meditate is that I used to feel like I didn't have enough time. So I should meditate more, But one thing that's been really good for me is to just like do less, I used to be so chaotic with all the things that I wanted to get done, which means I was just getting everything done in a really half-assed kind of way. So now I focus my time on my health, mental and physical. I work, obviously, because you need to work. And then, we spend loads of time together, and having that simplicity to it, it almost feels like you're kind of flowing through different things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it gets you in that lovely like flow state.
It does, absolutely.
And if you were to give people, because obviously we love speaking about the mind and mental health, like one kind of thing or one thing they could take away or that they could go and do today, what would that be?
To better their mental health, or like a tool they could use or something? Or?
Yeah, both.
I think it comes down to the basic things. People are big, including myself, on talking about tools that individuals can do, like meditation and journaling and exercise and all those sorts of things. But there's nothing that beats friendship and connection. So call a friend. Let them know that you need a vent for 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Or just let them know that you need to talk about yourself for 10 minutes, whatever it is. Go for it. Don't hold back. And more often than not, because they're your friend, you'll find out and realize that they're going through the same sort of thing. And that kind of connection is so important in this day and age because we are so isolated right now. So just call a friend, let them know that you love them and that you can't wait to catch up, for dinner. When, we're in isolation right now. I feel like international people listen to this is like, what the hell is people talking about? But I think having your friends around is the best.
Yeah, for sure. And where can people get your books when they're out and listen to your podcast and all things Tom Ahern? Where can they go?
Yeah, I suppose the best thing is Instagram. It's just tom.ahern, AHERN. The Mindmate podcast, which is like a baby of mine. I love it. We're getting some really interesting guests coming up on the show, and we've had some really interesting guests on the show, which is awesome. So that's been really exciting. The books are all, well, the one book that I have up there at the moment. Hopefully in a couple of months they'll all be up there, but they're on Amazon and Audible. So it's Yes, I'm Fine, Just Tired. I've never plugged myself this much. It feels weird.
I know. I'm loving it. I'm like, okay, books, podcast, Instagram, Facebook, all the things.
All the things. Yeah. No, but yeah, I suppose that's me. And I take excerpts from my books and chuck them up on Medium as blogs. So if you want to have a read of kind of what I write, you can just look up Tom Ahern on Medium as well. Give me some feedback, and keep going.
And do you know when the Nofs Foundation podcast will be released as well?
We're not. It's still kind of coming.
Okay, cool. So keep an eye out.
Keep an eye out. Absolutely.
Cool. And is there anything else that you'd like to say that we've not discussed or spoken about?
Don't think so, Von. I have to say I'm blown away with how good you are at this already.
What? Just saying.
I really am.
Really?
I really am. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I've done over 400 shows now. And I've been on other people's shows that are, you've got it. You really do have it.
Thank you.
Ability. Maybe it's just because we know each other very well.
It's the first show ever, and you're like, you're on.
Yeah, I don't think it's just that. I think it's, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, fucking hell, you've got something here.
Oh, thank you. So what do I say to people at the end? Subscribe, leave a review, follow.
And she's lost it.
Lots of other things.
Yeah, no. Well, just, subscribe. Like, I think the best thing is feedback, and...
Of course. I was going to say, please give me some feedback.
Well, I've given you some feedback there that I truly believe. But yeah, podcasting, I think, should be for everyone. Yeah. And it's fun. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Have you found it?
I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it, and I knew I was going to ask you things that we don't necessarily talk about all the time. And I love that we get to share our experiences through the mind and what we discuss, and psychedelics and breath work, and our we didn't really touch on it, but we said how I make my cacao in the morning, and you've got your new job. We've always got things to talk about. And I always jump on your show. So I'm excited. I'm like, Tom, come jump on my show,
I know.
And it'll be really interesting to see what we're doing in a couple of months together. So, yeah. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm pumped for it, Bob. It's gonna be awesome.
Me too. Oh, thank you so much for being my very first guest and my feedback. And we will catch up in a couple of months on the show for everyone to listen to.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to seeing you when you walk out of that door.
I know. We're in the same house, guys. But this is better. This is way better.
It is.
Cool.
Better.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.